Welcome to our deep dive into anxiety disorders.
Yeah,
That feeling heart racing.
yeah, palm sweating.
My like buzzing with what ifs.
Yeah,
So today we're going to explore kind of when that crosses the line, from everyday stress into a diagnosable disorder.
right.
And this is not about self-diagnosing. So if anything feels familiar, definitely chat with a health professional. This is about understanding,
Yeah,
not armchair psychology.
exactly. We're going to equip you with knowledge so you can understand things like different types of anxiety disorders, what might cause them, how they show up. Because anxiety, even at the disorder level, is incredibly common.
Yeah.
And understanding is the first step to feeling empowered.
Okay, so let's start with the big question.
Great.
What exactly is anxiety, and how is it different from, say, those pre-presentation jitters we all get sometimes?
I think of it like this: anxiety is your brain's smoke detector.
Right.
So a little puff of smoke, a bit of stress, the alarm goes off, gets your attention, helps you deal with the situation.
Yeah.
That's normal, even helpful anxiety.
Yeah.
But imagine the alarm going off every time you toast bread or someone lights a candle miles away.
Oh, wow.
So that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
That's the kind of persistent, out of proportion response we're talking about with anxiety disorders.
So it's not just the feeling itself, it's the intensity and how much it throws things off in your life?
Exactly.
Right. I've heard there are a bunch of different types of anxiety disorders,
Right.
not just one big umbrella term.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So let's take generalized anxiety disorder, or JZ for short.
Okay.
It's not just worrying a lot. It's when that worry becomes the problem feeding on itself in a way. You might be worrying about work relationships,
Okay.
health,
Yeah.
and that worry itself creates this constant tension, making it hard to focus on anything else.
So with GZD, it's almost like the the threat more so than what you're actually worried about.
Right.
That's interesting. What other types are there?
Well, you've probably heard of panic attacks.
Sure.
That sudden wave of terror, heart pounding, feeling like you're losing control.
Yeah.
That's often part of panic disorder,
Right.
where these attacks can come out of the blue,
Oh, wow.
making you afraid of, having another attack,
Right.
which can trap you in a cycle of avoidance.
That unpredictability must be terrifying.
Yeah.
I guess that's different from, say, social anxiety, where you're more afraid of specific situations.
Right.
Though I imagine that can be just as debilitating.
Absolutely. Social anxiety disorder isn't just being shy. It's a fear of judgment, of messing up in front of others that can be so intense it leads people to avoid all sorts of social events, even things they want to do.
It must be like your brain is convinced that everyone's watching and judging your every move.
Right.
That's rough. Then there are phobias, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like beyond just not liking spiders, it's a whole other level of fear.
Right. Phobias are about an extreme fear of a very specific thing, spiders, heights, flying. Someone might be fine with a picture of a spider. Yeah. But seeing a real one,
Yeah.
even a tiny harmless one, could trigger a full-blown panic response.
Yeah.
That's how out of proportion it gets.
Makes you wonder what causes these different disorders in the first place.
Yeah.
Is it all about genetics?
Right.
Like if your parents had anxiety, are you doomed?
It's not quite that simple.
Oh.
Genetics definitely plays a role. Think of it like inheriting a slightly more sensitive smoke detector.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's going to go off constantly.
Right.
Life experiences can be huge. Trauma, chronic stress, even big life changes can kind of prime that alarm system.
So it's more about a vulnerability that gets
Right.
triggered by certain things.
Exactly.
What else influences it? I remember you mentioned brain chemistry.
Yes, brain chemistry is crucial. It's like, imagine your brain has a recipe for regulating mood and stress, but some key ingredients are out of balance. That can lead to those anxiety responses getting amplified. And sometimes what seems like an anxiety disorder is actually a symptom of a physical health condition. Thyroid issues, heart problems.
Hold on. You're telling me that what feels like a mental health issue could actually be a clue that something else is going on in the body.
Exactly. It highlights how interconnected our systems are. That's why ruling out medical causes is so important.
Wow.
And we can't forget about substance use drugs, alcohol, even caffeine.
Yeah.
They can all mess with that delicate brain chemistry and make those anxiety symptoms much worse.
So it's like a multi-layered puzzle figuring out what's going on with someone's anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked a lot about causes. Let's shift gears to symptoms.
Yeah.
How does anxiety actually show UP?
Right.
Is it always obvious?
It's definitely more than just feeling nervous. Think of it in 3 categories: physical, emotional, and behavioral.
Hmm.
Physically, you might notice a racing, heart sweating, muscle tension, even digestive issues. That's your body in fight or flight mode.
So even stomach cause or sleep problems can
Yeah.
be linked to anxiety.
I mean-
That's something I wouldn't have necessarily connected.
Right.
What about the emotional side?
Emotionally, it's that feeling of dread, apprehension,
Mm.
sometimes a sense of panic or impending doom.
Mm-hmm.
It can be hard to concentrate, sleep, and even simple things can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then behaviorally, I'm guessing that's where we see the avoidance to withdrawing from things that trigger those feelings, right?
Yeah.
You got it. And that's just scratching the surface. We'll delve deeper into the specifics of each type and its impact in the next part. But before we move on, what's striking you so far about how anxiety can manifest? Any light bulbs going off?
I'm definitely thinking about all the physical things that I experience sometimes and never really connected to anxiety,
Yeah.
Like I just thought that was my IBS or whatever.
Oh,
But
right.
maybe there's more to it,
It could be. Absolutely.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating how many different ways anxiety can manifest in
Yeah.
our lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm curious to learn more about how to deal with all this.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that in the next part.
Okay, great.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we've explored kind of the what and the why of anxiety disorders, the different types, the potential causes, how those symptoms show up, sometimes in really surprising ways.
Yeah.
But now I think the big question is like, what can you actually do about it?
Right.
Because knowledge is great, but feeling empowered to actually take action is key.
Absolutely. And the good news is there's a whole toolkit of strategies out there.
Okay.
It's not one size fits all, but there are things that can help you manage those anxiety symptoms and reclaim your sense of peace.
All right, lay it on me. What's the first tool we're pulling out of this toolkit?
Let's start with mindfulness.
Okay.
And this isn't about chanting Om on a mountaintop,
Okay.
though that's cool if it's your thing.
Sure.
Mindfulness is about being present right here, right now, without judgment. It's like hitting the pause button on your internal commentary and just noticing what's happening in your body, your mind, without getting swept away by it.
So instead of getting sucked into that anxiety spiral, what if this, what if that?
Exactly.
You're kind of observing it from a distance.
Right.
Does that actually help?
It does. It might sound
Yeah.
simple, but think about it this way. Imagine you're caught in a rip current.
Okay.
Fighting against it just makes you more tired, more panicked.
Right.
Mindfulness is like turning your body sideways to that current, letting it pass you by while you regain your strength, your clarity.
Oh, hi.
And a simple way to practice this is by focusing on your breath. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the air going in and out. It's an anchor to the present moment.
Okay, I can see how that could be grounding,
Yeah.
especially in the middle of a panic attack.
Right.
But what about when it's more of that like low-level constant worry? Is
Okay.
mindfulness helpful for that too?
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just the breath. You can practice mindfulness through meditation yoga, even just paying attention to your senses during everyday activities. Really savoring that first sip of coffee, noticing the textures of your food, the colors of the leaves changing outside. It's about training your brain to be more present, less caught up in those anxious thought loops.
So it's like building a mental muscle,
Exactly.
getting better at noticing and not reacting.
Right.
What else helps with that quieting the mind piece? I know we touched on deep breathing earlier.
Yes, deep breathing is a game changer.
Yeah.
When you're anxious, your breath gets short and shallow, which actually feeds the anxiety.
Really?
But deep, slow breaths, especially into your belly, send a signal to your body that it's okay to relax. It's like flipping the switch from fight or flight to chill mode.
I've heard of different techniques. Is
Yeah.
there one that's particularly effective?
There's box breathing. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. It's like creating a rhythm for your nervous system to follow. And the best part, you can do it anywhere, anytime. Waiting in line. Box breathing. Feeling overwhelmed at work. Box breathing.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness and deep breathing to help kind of calm things down in the moment.
Right.
But what about addressing those underlying negative thought patterns
Yeah.
that fuel the anxiety?
Yeah.
Can you actually change those?
You absolutely can. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like becoming your own thought detective.
Okay.
One technique is cognitive restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're fact-checking your own thoughts.
Okay, walk me through that.
Okay.
Let's say I'm constantly worried about making mistakes at work.
Right.
How would I fact check that?
You'd ask yourself, What's the evidence for this thought? Have I made a catastrophic mistake before? What's the realistic likelihood of it happening again? And even if I did make a mistake, what's the worst that could happen? Would I lose my job? Be banished from the planet? Often that worst-case scenario isn't as likely or terrible as your anxiety tells you.
So it's about putting things in perspective, not letting your anxious brain hijack the narrative.
Exactly.
That makes sense. What other CBT tools are there?
Another powerful one is exposure therapy.
Mm.
This is particularly helpful for phobias. It's about gradually and safely confronting your fear, showing your brain that the feared object or situation isn't actually dangerous.
So if I'm terrified of spiders, I wouldn't jump straight into a room full of tarantulas.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about starting small and gradually increasing the exposure.
Okay.
Maybe you begin by looking at pictures of spiders, then watching videos, then observing one from a safe distance.
Oh.
It's about rewiring those fear responses step by manageable step.
Okay, so CBT is a big part of the anxiety toolkit. But what about day-to-day habits?
Yep.
Can things like diet and exercise really make a difference?
They absolutely can. Exercise is a natural stress buster. It releases endorphins, those feel-good chemicals, and helps your body process stress hormones more efficiently. Even a brisk walk can make a difference.
So it's not about becoming a marathon runner, just incorporating more movement into your life.
Exactly. And a healthy diet plays a role too. Think nourishing your brain with whole foods, plenty of fruits and veggies, and limiting processed stuff, sugary drinks, and excessive caffeine.
Oh.
Those can actually exacerbate anxiety.
Interesting. I guess it makes sense. You wouldn't put low-grade fuel in a high-performance car
Right.
and expect it to run smoothly.
Exactly.
Right. Same goes for your brain.
Same goes for your brain.
What about sleep?
Yeah.
Everyone says it's important, but is it really that crucial for anxiety?
Sleep is like hitting the reset button for your brain and body. When you're sleep deprived, your anxiety is more likely to spike.
Okay.
So prioritize good sleep hygiene, consistent bedtime relaxing routine before bed, avoiding screens before sleep. It all makes a difference.
So many things to consider. Yeah. It feels like managing anxiety is about taking care of your whole self.
It is.
Mind, body, the whole shebang.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, even with all these tools, you might need a little extra support,
I mean,
like therapy.
yeah.
When is it time to reach out for professional help?
If your anxiety is interfering with your daily life, your work relationships, if you're constantly withdrawing from things you enjoy, that's a sign you might benefit from professional guidance.
Okay.
And certainly if you're having thoughts of harming yourself, reach out immediately.
Yeah, there's no shame in asking for help.
No.
It's a sign of strength.
Absolutely.
And taking your mental health seriously.
Exactly. And therapists can provide personalized support, help you develop coping strategies that really work for you, and explore any underlying issues that might be contributing to your anxiety.
So we've got mindfulness breathing exercises, CBT lifestyle changes, and therapy if needed.
Right.
That's a pretty robust toolkit.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's still a journey, right? Not a quick fix.
It takes time, effort, and some days are going to be harder than others. Be kind to yourself, celebrate small victories, and remember, progress, not perfection, is the goal.
Sometimes a little bit of anxiety can actually be a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I've heard it can be linked to creativity.
That's a fascinating connection we're going to explore in our next part.
Oh, cool.
We'll delve into how anxiety and creativity can actually feed off each other.
Yeah.
And how tapping into your creative energy can be another powerful tool for managing anxiety and living a more fulfilling life.
I can't wait to dive into that.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Until then, keep experimenting with those tools, keep being kind to yourself, and remember you've got this.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. I'm so intrigued by this next part.
Yeah.
The link between anxiety and creativity, because I think most people would assume that they're opposites.
Yeah.
That anxiety would, like, BLOCK, creativity, not fuel it.
It's a common assumption, but it's much more complex than that.
Okay.
Think about it. Anxiety often makes you hyper-aware, sensitive to your surroundings, even prone to overthinking. Not always fun.
Right.
But TT, those are also traits that many creative people share.
So instead of just seeing the big picture,
Yeah.
you're noticing all the tiny details, the
Yes.
nuances that other people might miss.
Exactly. And that heightened perception, that constant questioning and analyzing, can be a wellspring for creative ideas. Artists, writers, musicians, they often draw inspiration from their anxieties, their fears, their struggles.
So it's not about pretending those feelings don't exist.
Right.
It's about channeling that energy into something else, something creative.
Exactly.
Do you have any examples of this?
Think about Vincent van Gogh.
Oh, yeah.
His struggles with mental health are well documented, but that intensity also poured into his art his use of color and brushstrokes.
Hmm.
Or consider writers like Sylvia Plath and Edgar Allan Poe.
Right.
Their anxieties about life and death, those dark themes became central to their powerful writing.
Yeah, it's almost like their art gave a voice to those feelings,
Yeah.
a way to process them that might not have been possible otherwise.
Right.
And that in itself could be therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Expressing those complex emotions through a creative outlet can be incredibly cathartic. It's like releasing pressure, but instead of an explosion,
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful piece of art, a moving poem, a soul-stirring song.
So we're not saying anxiety is good,
Right.
but we're saying it can be a source of creative fuel if you can learn to harness it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot, where anxiety doesn't cripple you, but instead informs and inspires your creative process. And there's actual research backing this up.
Oh, wow.
Studies show that people with higher anxiety tend to score higher on creativity tests.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
So how can someone tap into that? Like,
Yeah.
if I'm feeling anxious,
Yeah.
how do I turn that into creativity
Right.
instead of letting it overwhelm me?
First, find a creative outlet you genuinely enjoy. Don't force yourself into something just because it's supposed to be creative.
Right.
It could be painting, writing, dancing, cooking, anything that lets you express yourself.
So no judgment,
No judgment.
just play and experimentation.
Exactly.
That takes the pressure off.
Right.
Which I imagine is key when you're already feeling anxious.
Right. And remember, creativity is a process, not a product. Focus on the joy of creating, not the end result.
Okay.
Set aside dedicated time. Create a space that inspires you. Maybe surround yourself with music or scents that put you in a creative mood.
It's like setting the stage for your imagination to come out and play.
Right.
What else helps?
Don't be afraid to share your work, even if it feels vulnerable.
Okay.
Connecting with other creative people, getting feedback, being part of a community, that can be incredibly empowering and motivating.
It's like you're reminding yourself that you're not alone in this,
Exactly.
which is especially important when anxiety tries to isolate you.
Exactly. And one last thing, remember that sometimes anxiety can block creativity. If you're feeling completely overwhelmed, it's okay to step back. Focus on those calming techniques we talked about in the previous parts.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, deep breathing, those are essential too.
So it's about being self-aware, recognizing when you need to soothe the anxiety
Right.
before you can tap into that creative energy.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a dance, finding that rhythm between acknowledging the anxiety and using it as fuel, but also knowing when to prioritize self-care and calming techniques.
Yeah.
And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into anxiety disorders.
We have.
The different types, the potential causes, the ways it shows up, those practical tools for managing it.
Yeah.
And now this fascinating connection to creativity.
Right.
What's the biggest takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
The biggest takeaway is this. Anxiety disorders are real. They're common. But they are absolutely manageable. You don't have to let anxiety control your life. There are tools, there's support, and there's even potential for it to fuel incredible creativity.
Right.
Don't be afraid to seek help. Don't give up on finding what works for you.
So well said. And remember, you, our listener, you are not alone in this journey. Knowledge is power, and you've gained a whole lot of knowledge today.
Yeah, you have.
Now go out there and experiment, explore, create, and most importantly, take good care of yourself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.